Which Utah Utes are set to shine in the Coliseum on Saturday night as the Utah Utes take on the USC Trojans? We're talking about on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We're available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. You can go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege. It's all lowercase, no spaces, Locked On College, for a free deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Once again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code Locked On College. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. On today's show, we're going to be talking about which Utah football players I think are set to really have good games taking on USC in Southern California on Saturday night. It's going to be a fun showdown, top 20 showdown, and one the more and more I watch and just think about this game that I truly believe Utah can win, even without Cam Rising, Brant Keithy, and now even guys, unfortunately, like Thomas Yasmin. Just the injury bug has been really aggressive towards the Utah football team this season. But despite that, they are 5-1, and I think they have a real shot to go into the Coliseum and emerge victorious. So let's start on the defensive side of the ball. We'll get to the offensive predictions in the second segment. And to close this one out, I do just want to talk about what a fourth straight win for Utah over USC would mean for Utah. First, though, want to dive into the defensive side of the ball that I highlighted. So first, talking about how many turnovers do I think the Utah defense is going to force on Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams coming off a game in which he threw 3 interceptions, also got strip sacked once, but was able to get back on top of it on that one time, if I remember correctly. Caleb Williams is one of the most talented players in college football I've ever seen. I've talked about that frequently on Locked On Utes, but he did really struggle last week. And I think if you look at what he struggled with being under pressure, that's something Utah's done a really good job against Caleb Williams, applying pressure. Outside of the very first half they played him in October, we have 1.5 halves of football where Utah, or basically have 3 halves of football, where Utah has really done a good job slowing down and in some ways even shutting down the USC offense. USC scored 28 points in the first half against Utah at Wistrcill Stadium. Since then, they've never even gotten close to that when the game's been competitive. So credit the Utah Utes defense. Morgan Scalley does a great job always showing up, showing out. And I do believe, because if you look at Notre Dame, what they did, they were able to pressure Caleb Williams, and under duress at times he made poor decisions. Utah's going to be able to do that, and I do think he'll make a poor decision or two. I think he's going to get cough up another fumble in this one. I think it'll be a strip sack. I'm feeling Jonah Eliss, coming in from the blind side, forcing the ball out like he does, using his multiple spin moves, his hands. I think Jonah Eliss definitely gets home with actually 2 sacks, but I think one of those will be a strip sack. And for the interception, I think, because I do think Caleb Williams is going to toss one pick in this game. It could be very late, like the one he threw to RJ Hubert last year at Wistrcill Stadium, or he actually threw one to RJ Hubert at Wistrcill Stadium, and that was to end the game. Then he also threw one to basically end the game in the Wistrcill Stadium of the South in Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, where Utah has been home and raised 2 Pac-12 championships trophies at the conclusion of that contest 2 years in a row now. I think Sione Vaki is going to get the interception. That's my prediction. I think Vaki will just be flying around making plays. I think we'll see Vaki get more of the two-way college football hype he deserves. Look, anytime you do something on the Pac-12 network, I love the Pac-12 network. I think their analysts are great. I think the people are great, but we do just know for a fact whenever you play on the Pac-12 network, there are not as many eyeballs on you as when you play on Fox and ESPN. That is where this game comes in. It's going to be on Fox, nationally televised. So it's an opportunity for Utah to really be spotlighted here. And guys like Sione Vaki, I think, are going to capitalize for what they do on both sides of the ball. So I do expect Sione Vaki to emerge with an interception. As for other defensive predictions, said Jonah Eliss with 2 sacks. I actually think Utah's getting home on Caleb Williams 5 times, Caleb is especially vulnerable from that the left side of the defensive line for Utah, the right tackle spot for the Trojans, very weak. I think that's something Utah can get after. Look for Nate Ritchie to get home with a blitz. Connor O'Toole, I think, gets down with his first full sack of the season, had half one last week. And Sione Vaki, how huge was he late in the season for Utah last year, and especially in the Pac-12 championship game for Utah with his ability to create that interior pressure and push the pocket. That's why I think Vaki comes up big and gets his first sack. And you can even see Vaki, by watching him, really starting to get back up to speed and regain his form that he had last year after missing time with an injury. So I do think the front seven is going to show out. I think Corene Reed will once again lead Utah in tackles. I think it'll be all over the Trojans running backs, although I could very well see it being like a JT Broughton or Zemiah Vaughn leading this team in tackles, because USC likes to air it out, and they're going to try to do so a lot. But I do think Utah is going to be able to hold Caleb Williams under 300 passing yards. Caleb Williams was held under 200 last week, surprisingly. I'm not expecting – that was one of the things. Even if they played Notre Dame this week, they wouldn't hold him under 200 yards passing. So I think that's a little crazy to suggest they would do that. But I do think it's not crazy to say that Utah will hold Caleb Williams under 300 passing yards in this game because of the talent they have in the secondary, the pass rush, and the great advantage they have against the offensive line of the Trojans that we just highlighted. I also think USC is not going to be able to get the run game going. This is a Utah defense that's one of the best in college football at many things. That includes run defense. In fact, if I remember the statistic correctly that was posted by Porter Larson of ESPN 700 on Twitter, they might have the best run defense in college football. So not expecting this Trojans offensive line and running game that struggled to have success at home against one of the best run defense in college football. So I do think Utah holds USC under 70 yards on the ground. So lots of third and longs for Caleb Williams, and he'll make plays. And the Utah defensive backs will get beat at times, as they've gotten beat a couple times throughout the season. They'll probably get beat more in this game than they have any other time this season because of the talent with Brendan Rice, Mario Williams, Zachariah Branch, and even more guys I'm not even mentioning. And hopefully Zachariah Branch is healthy for this matchup. I know he's a little dinged up right now. But yeah, I just think when you look at the pressure that Utah will be applying, the corners are going to win some matchups and the USC receivers are going to win some matchups. So I do expect that to be a good back and forth bout. And I'm just excited to see this Utah defense get an opportunity to. We know this Utah defense is good. This is a whole nother level, and it kicks off an end of season slate where you pretty much only play quarterbacks who are on a whole nother level. With Caleb Williams today, Bo Nix next week, Michael Penix about a little under a month from now. Then you get Shedeur Sanders even to end the season. That's without mentioning a guy like Fifita, who's really finding success at Arizona. This is the toughest. This will be the toughest stretch of the season for Utah defensively, I believe. I think they are more than capable of rising up. Morgan Scalley, I really think if you were to ask someone in college football, like, you need a defensive coordinator to stop Caleb Williams, I think I can present a very strong case that Morgan Scalley should be that candidate based on his track record of success against Caleb last season and the things he does, bringing pressure and blitzes from all over the place. So I'm very excited. I think Utah, even though they've been strong and stout defensively, they're fired up for this challenge to go in on a primetime game, taking on a team that's always as highly hyped as the USC Trojans, continue their domination over the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and Lincoln Riley. It's a great opportunity for Utah, and one I expect multiple players on the defensive side of the ball to rise up and perform, having some of their best games of the season. That's what's going to take if Utah wants to win this. But as I mentioned, I do think Utah forces 2 turnovers on Caleb Williams and lots of guys in for strong afternoons against what is one of the best offenses in college football based on what I've seen on film and what I think is going to play out. So that's how I think the defense will fare. Which offensive players do I think are going to be in for a big nightcap against the USC Trojans? We're going to be breaking that down in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about our friends at Prize Picks. And with Prize Picks, you guys know that it's the most fun I've had winning up to 25 times my money. Prize Picks is super easy to use and play. And when you're talking about Prize Picks, they get you their money quickly. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on projected stats, and you can place your entry. They have quick withdrawals, easy game plan, and an enormous selection of players and stat types that make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. This week on Prize Picks, I think I'm going to go with, gosh, I mean, why not focus on the Thursday night matchup, right? I'm a little bit nervous about the Jags because of the questions around Trevor Lawrence's health, but I think Derek Carr could potentially have a lot of success for the Saints. And I feel like Alvin Kamara, one of these games, is going to get going and be the Alvin Kamara of old that we know. So I'm looking for the Saints to do some things offensively. If you guys think the Saints are going to have some success offensively, make sure you guys head over to Prize Picks and get in on some of the great offers they have going on. You can go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use the code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Once again, go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Alrighty, coming back into this one, we're going to talk about the Utah defense in one moment. But first, really fast, got to talk to you about college football kickoff live, because each Friday, Locked On will go live at 11 a.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College football kickoff live will cover the playoff implications, the conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can deliver from their insightful analysts, and hosts from Locked On College teams that cover their teams every day. You can find Locked On College football kickoff live every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You won't want to miss it. Already after the fake out, now we are actually going to be resuming our talk about the Utah football team. Let's talk about the Utah defense. I think this is we just talked about the Utah defense and the success they'll have. I think Utah offensively, I do think this could be, I've talked about it throughout the week. I feel like this could be a really good game for Bryson Barnes. I think Bryson's going to throw 2 touchdown passes in this game and throw over 200 yards. And you may be like, ooh, that's a little spicy. But I think it's not that crazy to say when, as I just highlighted in my defensive predictions, I think Utah's going to be spotted some short fields a couple times. And every game we've seen Bryson make a couple of big throws. Coach Witt has also talked about being a little bit more aggressive with Bryson. And while the Utah offense being more explosive has been something that's been discussed for the past few seasons, and it never really is, the deep passing game has always been a little stronger with Cam Rising in there. And Bryson has shown the ability to uncork the deep ball, whether you're talking about the pass he threw to Munir McClain, the bomb to Money Parks to open the season. There is potential with Bryson to unlock a little bit of an explosive passing element, especially against a Trojans secondary that has struggled to tackle. We know that going back to last season. So this is one where I really think Andy Ludwig's going to come in with a great game plan. He did a great job beating up on Alex Grinch a season ago, and I think this year will be no different. I think he's ready, dialed in. I expect a lot of quick stuff early on to get Bryson settled in, and as the game wears on, I think they're going to let him air it out a little bit, and I think it's going to be a good result for Utah. I think Utah will have 2 pass plays over 20 yards in this game. That may not be a crazy prediction for those of you casual people like who just college football fans who clicked on this channel today, but those of you who follow Utah football, that would be pretty impressive for Bryson based on how they've kind of used him as more of a game manager outside of those kind of like 1 or 2 throws a game where he really uncorks it to the outside. So I do expect Bryson to play well. I could definitely see him having a rushing touchdown too in this one, just being the high IQ player he is, recognizing like, okay, nothing's open, and I see a running gap, I'm going to take that. Bryson's always done a very good job of that. So I do expect a strong showing from Bryson. I expect him to take care of the football and distribute the ball to Utah's playmakers, whether that's on screens or getting it to the Mikey Matthews, the Devon Vele's, the Landon Kings, who I think could be involved in this one too. So I'm excited to see it. And speaking of just the passing game for who I think is going to lead Utah in receiving yards, I did hear Munir McClain is a little banged up, because going into this one, I was going to say Munir McClain would be the guy I'm looking at. But I actually think it's going to be Money Parks. Money Parks, the play last year, Money Parks made 2 great plays against USC last season, at least off the top of my head. He might have made more. There was the 3rd and 19 in the Pac-12 championship game, which was just horrendous tackling. But you got to credit Money for still making the play. And even more so, I would look back to the first time around Utah played USC, and the Utah offense was really looking for that momentum. And I think Money hauled in a 49-yard pass to put Utah down at like the 1-yard line in that one. Just kind of a big momentum play for that Utah offense that had been kind of slow to see. Like that big play element of the Utah offense get going in that moment was really big for the Utah Utes. So that's one where I look back on, and I think Money, who's already caught some deep passes this season, is going to bring in 2 game-changing catches for this Utah offense. But look for Devon Vele and Mikey Matthews to continue to make plays for Utah. And I did highlight Landon King already. I think he's going to catch 2 or 3 passes. This Utah offense loves to involve their tight ends, and they have a very talented one in Landon King, who the rest of the season we're getting to see Landon King, but I think next year especially is when we'll really see Landon King, who I really think this time from a year from now, we'll be talking about Landon King as one of the best 10 tight ends in college football because of how this Utah offense uses their tight ends and because of how talented I truly believe Landon King is. So I expect a solid day from the passing game. And guess what? I think the reason they're going to have success is because the running game is going to get going for Utah. I believe in this game, Utah is going to have over 200 yards on the ground. I see Jaquindon Jackson leading Utah in carries once again, and this time leading them in rushing yards as he might have done last week. Actually, I think he would have done it if it wasn't for the 70-yard from Sione Vaki, but credit for Vaki for making that play. But I think Jaquindon's just going to continue to run hard, break out of tackles. He had a really good game against USC a season ago in the Pac-12 championship game. So look for Jaquindon Jackson to be that tough and shifty at times back for Utah, moving the chains, getting some of the tough yards while also breaking off a couple of big runs too. So I'm excited to see Jaquindon Jackson get an opportunity to shine in the Coliseum. And of course, he won't be support alone in the running game, as we are going to see Sione Vaki a lot in the backfield. We'll see how much wildcat stuff we see with Sione. I would love to see, anytime you get a wildcat quarterback like Sione and one who's as fast as him, I'd love to see a wide receiver pass game. Or excuse me, not wide receiver pass game, but see Sione throw a pass just because you think he's going to be running, and then boop, Landon King or Miki Suguturaga is wide open in the back of the end zone. Suguturaga would be a really good one because everyone's going to be thinking that he's the blocking tight end more. You're just not as expecting him to go out as much. So that'd be something fun to see. But yeah, with how electric Sione was, have to play him on offense. And I do think he's in for a special throw. I think he'll only end up with a much more like a 50 to 70 yards because I do think JJ plays well, but I think he's going to have a couple of dazzling highlight plays that Fox will be pumping on their social media accounts. And as I said, too, I think he's going to get that interception. So a very good game for Sione Vaki. And if I'm predicting the Utah offense to be so successful in this one, that means that the offensive line must have had a pretty good game, and I do think they are going to. When you look at Satao Laumea, Keaton Bills, Mokafisi, Coley, and whether it's Tongi or Spencer Fano at the left tackle spot, I felt like the Utah offensive line played one of their best games, and arguably their best game of the season, honestly, against Cal last week. And I expect them to continue to trend upward because that's what Jim Harding's teams always do, and his offensive lines always do, is they trend upward after the bye in terms of the quality of the offensive line play. So I do believe that the Utah offensive line is going to be sharp on their P's and Q's in this game and going to be executing at a high level, allowing the Utah offense to thus execute at a high level. So yes, I believe Utah is in for a lot of offensive success and defensive success in this game. If that is the case, that would mean Utah is going to escape the Coliseum with a victory. So I'm going to talk about what a fourth straight win over USC would mean for Utah in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you guys about one of the sponsors of today's show in our friends at Jase Medical. The Jase case is a personalized emergency kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common daily deadly bacterial infection. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medication based on your unique needs. Jase Medical now offers customability for your Jase case with dozens of add-ons and medications. You can choose the medication that best fits you and your family's unique needs. You can also get a gift card and buy your family a Jase case, giving them the opportunity by going to jasemedical.com, and you can enter the code Locked On. This is just the deal that our friends at Jase Medical are offering to you. You can go to jasemedical.com and enter the code Locked On at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code Locked On at jasemedical.com. And don't forget the Jase Medical case has 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jase case is to fill it out, a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of our board-certified physicians, and you can get ongoing care from physicians on any treatment-related questions, doctor created, doctor recommended. And once again, you can go to jasemedical.com and enter the code Locked On. That's all caps, no spaces, at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code Locked On at jasemedical.com. JASE medical.com. Alrighty, closing this one out. Let's talk about what a win would mean for Utah. And not just a win. Actually, we'll go small picture first, because I do want to talk big picture of 4 straight wins over a program as prestigious as the USC Trojans, as they love to remind us to, that they are USC. They haven't been able to fight on against Utah for the past few seasons. That'd be funny if that got clipped in something, because that is kind of a hot takey thing, I guess. Okay. Talk about what it would mean for this season. It means everything's still on the table for Utah. It means if this team is still capable of making a Pac-12 championship, it means that this team is going to go into the Oregon game with just 1 loss. It's still, as I mentioned, everything's still on the table, and you have an opportunity to achieve what you set out this season. I'm starting to really doubt that Cam Rising is going to play this season. That is often no insider information. That's just on the continued delays and everything and the waiting game we keep playing. So I just I don't see Cam playing right now. I would be surprised if Brant did as well. We'll do the whole offseason red shirt thing in the offseason with if those guys do have an absence. But yeah, for now, Utah would still be alive for everything they hope for, and it'd be incredible for them to go into the Coliseum and get a win, especially for a USC team that is down and got to be ready to be motivated to get back on the field and put out a better effort than what they displayed last week against Notre Dame. But talking big picture, this would be Utah's fourth straight win over USC. You go back to Cam Rising's first real start in 2019, or it's just his first start, I do believe, because I think he came in halfway through the San Diego State game, nearly led the comeback, but fell just short in that contest. Then you look back to last year, and then you play, like I said, then you play USC. Was very good in that game. That was a bad Trojans team. I think they might have already fired Clay Hilton by that point, or he was out the door very quickly after, because Utah just steamrolled him. That was the flea flicker game for Cam Rising. Cam just looked great and set the stage for what was to come against them that was 2021. Then looking at 2022, Utah played them first in Rice-Eccles Stadium. I would argue the best game Cam's ever played is him and Dalton Kincaid shredded the Trojans defense and completed an impressive comeback to win that one with Cam powering in the 2-point conversion. Then Pac-12 championship game, you look at what Utah did on both sides of the ball, just sheer domination at points, and what a strong win for the Utah football program. And lost those 2 games during 3 games actually during the regular season, 1 non-conference, 2 in conference, but still emerges Pac-12 champs. That was just something that was really cool to see a year ago, and that makes it 3 straight over USC. This would be 4 straight. What would it mean to make it 4 straight? What that would mean is that it's just another step in Utah's resume as one of the premier college football programs right now. And when I say premier, I should, maybe premier is the wrong, because when I say premier, you guys think probably Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. That's fair. They cement them as a top 10 team in college football, because that's what, and not just top 10 team, a top 10 program over the last few years. Yes, the Texas brand is better, and Texas is having a very strong season right now. All it takes is 2 losses, and Texas is once again out of the playoff, and it's Texas, so that very well could be happening. But focusing in on what we're talking about with Utah here, just to be able to beat a team like USC, especially say you were 3-0 against the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, to have that against one of the most talented quarterbacks in college football. Someone, NFL scout, and I actually might even agree with this, called Caleb the best prospect he's scouted since Peyton Manning. I don't see, obviously he's not saying he is Peyton Manning, but just in terms of the quality of player that he projects to be. And I can really get behind that. That's how special I think Caleb Williams has the chance to be based on what we've seen so far. The question, can he do it? That's what'll be interesting. So, but yeah, I just think this is a huge thing for Utah when you can say, yeah, we beat USC 4 times. It's another ascension into where Utah belongs, and when being discussed amongst the 10 to 15 best teams in college football. It's what they've been the last few years, and wins like this just look so good on your resume. 4 straight wins on USC, especially, just send them with a kick in the butt out the door in their race for the final Pac-12 championship, which they'd still be in the race, but a loss to Utah would really hurt them, considering they still have games coming up against Washington and Oregon too. So I'm very curious to see how the Trojans respond, but I do think Utah is going to be able to pull this one out. I really do. We're going to do final predictions. I'm going to do score predictions on tomorrow's show with Spencer McLaughlin and Mark Colkin, but I really think this is going to be a game for Utah where they execute in all 3 phases. I think the kicking game will be strong too. Becker will boom in a few kicks, and Notre Dame had a huge return late in that game on a kickoff. Who's to say Utah couldn't have a huge return of their own in this contest too? So all fun things to keep an eye out for. And we greatly appreciate you guys joining this episode of Locked On Utes today. As I mentioned, we'll be back with you tomorrow for a full extensive game preview and matchup preview and a fun Locked On crossover. We look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day. And as always, go Utes.